Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Goldsberg and I am a senior in the honors program. I am an English major with a psychology minor and education certifications in childhood, early childhood, and special education. After being interested in the practice of co-teaching and inquiring about the process with my peers at college, I quickly learned that our experiences in the classroom were very different. After investigating other students' perspectives in co-taught classroom, I noticed that the research regarding the student's point of view was minimal. Instead, studies were focused on the teacher experience, eliminating the most critical people in the classroom and who co-teaching is truly for, the students. This presentation will focus on my and Dr. Taylor's research on the student's perspective of co-teaching, investigating the experiences of Mount St. Mary College students with two teachers in the classroom. To begin my presentation, I want to introduce the questions that I explored during my project and that I will explain throughout this presentation. The questions that I aim to answer are: how did having two teachers in a classroom impact students' achievement? How did having two teachers in a classroom impact the level of individualization provided? Did students in co-taught classes become aware that there were students with disabilities in the class? And did demographics impact the use of co-teaching as an instructional practice? However, before we dive into the research questions, it is essential to begin with some background research on the instructional practice of co-teaching. The first most important step is to start with defining what co-teaching is. Marilyn Friend, a co-teaching expert, spent a large part of her career educating on co-teaching practices and how to implement them into the classroom. Her definition of co-teaching is as follows: two or more professionals delivering substantive instruction to a diverse or blended group of students in a single space. Now, it is important to note four key components in this definition. 1. Co-teaching requires two educators. In her co-teaching guidelines, Friend explains that one of the professionals is a general education teacher and the other is a special education teacher. Both are certified teachers. That is very important to know. 2. The second component is that co-teachers deliver substantive instruction. They are not meant to supervise students in the classroom, assist only one student, or assist in delivering add-ons that are only somewhat related to the general education curriculum. 3. The educators are teaching a diverse group of students, that which includes students with disabilities. And the final part is a single physical space. When co-teaching, there may be times when students are separated into groups for instruction, but what should not occur is teachers teaching in two separate classrooms the entire time. It should be in one space. There are 6 different models that can be utilized for co-teaching. The first model is called station teaching, when students are divided into 3 or more groups. Each teacher delivers parts of the lesson at a station, and the third station serves as a place for independent work. Students rotate throughout the station so that they work with each teacher during the lesson. So as you see in this top picture, by the door there is one teacher working with a group of students. By the back corner, there is one teacher working with a group of students, and it is hard to see, but to the left you see one student there, some students working independently on a computer. So those students are working at the independent stations, and they will rotate throughout the entire lesson. And then in this bottom picture, you could see that the red dot represents one teacher, the blue dot represents the other teacher, and the middle is the students working individually. So they'll rotate throughout the entire lesson. With this model, teachers benefit from the lower teacher-pupil ratio, and teachers have an equal status in the classroom, and equality between them is not a serious concern since both have active teaching roles. Drawbacks, however, include noise, high activity level, and pacing lessons to schedule the correct switch in stations. So the teachers have to ensure that they're teaching something that will last the same amount of time so there's not dead time in between and the students are able to effectively switch stations. The next model of co-teaching is called parallel teaching. So in this model, students are divided into 2 groups, and each teacher works with a group of students to teach the same thing or to present instruction in an alternative way. So in this top left picture, you could see there is one teacher who is at the whiteboard teaching a group of students, and then there is one teacher who is at the smartboard teaching a group of students. And then in this bottom picture, the red dot represents one teacher, the blue dot represents another teacher. So they're split into 2 separate groups. Teachers have to coordinate their efforts so the students receive essentially the same instruction within the same time period. So even if they're teaching it in an alternative way, you have to make sure they're learning the same objectives, even if it's in a different way or presented differently. Positives include more individualized attention with a smaller teacher-to-student ratio and the ability to personalize instruction to each group of students. The next model of co-teaching is called alternative teaching, and that includes a teacher instructing a small group of students to reteach, pre-teach, enrich, or assess. So as you see in this top left picture, it's kind of hard since it's split, but to the right is one teacher, she's reading a book to the students, and then to the left, another teacher pulled a group of students to the back to work with them separately. So you can better see it in this bottom right model. You can see the green semicircle in the front is one teacher teaching the group of students, and then at the back table is another green semicircle teacher, and she's teaching that small group of students right there. This approach ensures that students who need help are getting it in small groups, but it can stigmatize students with disabilities if you continuously pull them during every single lesson. So if you're continuously not allowing them to be with the group at some points, that could be problematic. The fourth approach is team teaching, in which both teachers share the instruction of students. The students are to remain in a single group, and the teachers co-instruct and integrate their contributions throughout the lesson. So in this top picture, you can see both teachers have an active role in the lesson. So one teacher is at the smartboard, it looks like she's taking notes, and the other teacher is reading a book. And again, in this bottom picture, you see the two green semicircle teachers at the front teaching the students at the same time. This approach is reported to be uncomfortable with some co-teachers, but others who feel safe utilizing it find it rewarding and extremely beneficial to their students. This cooperative model also allows for both teachers to have an active role in the classroom, which further benefits students and their learning. The fifth model is called One Teach, One Assist. Now, One Teach, One Assist includes one teacher leading instruction and the other assisting by interacting with students individually, answering questions, or redirecting attention. So as you can see in this top picture right here, there is one teacher who is at the smartboard teaching, and then there is one teacher who is at a small group in the back appearing to help them. And in this bottom diagram, you see one teacher again at the front, and this back teacher looks like they are in the middle of two desks assisting students. Although this is often the most utilized approach in a co-taught classroom, this model is not as effective as the other more collaborative models are. This approach can also cause students to question the teacher's authority and to create a distinction between a main teacher and an assistant teacher. The special education teacher in that case is underutilized since they are typically the assistant teacher, which they're not supposed to be, but that's what they're labeled as, and they're not being used to their full potential. So that's really important to keep in mind during this presentation. The final model of co-teaching is called One Teach, One Observe, which is extremely similar to One Teach, One Assist, in which one teacher is leading, but this time the other teacher is observing, not assisting. So as you can see in this picture, one teacher is at the top, that top left picture, one teacher at the top teaching, and then the other teacher you can see is in the back, and this teacher appears to not be assisting, they are just watching. So here, this picture, this bottom diagram with the semicircles is a really good depiction of it too. There's a green semicircle teacher at the top, at the front of the class teaching, and then there's the other teachers at their desk. So one teacher has clearly an active role and the other teacher does not have an active role. This again creates a level of superiority between the two teachers. One teacher is leading the lesson while the other is just watching, meaning that one teacher, again, is not getting used to their full potential. So when looking at the teacher and adult perspective, research has found many positives to co-teaching. Some positives include a connection between co-teaching and school satisfaction, as well as self-efficacy for students with disabilities. Co-teachers have also felt that their students have experienced improved self-confidence, academic performance, social skills, and peer relationships. Additionally, co-teaching has also helped students to feel like they belong in the classroom, therefore increasing their belief in their own capabilities, which is seen in that bullet right there. Finally, students with disabilities who spend their entire day in co-taught classrooms have been shown to make significant improvements as compared to the students who received pull-out education services. Despite the positives, there have also been concerns that have arose over the practice. Many parents worried that class content may be watered down to address the needs of special education students, therefore disadvantaging the average and high-achieving students in the class. Parents of special education students also worry that the students may lose the individualized supports and attention that they had received in their strictly special education classes. Additionally, teachers are concerned that special education teachers may be regulated to the role of support personnel or monitors, being forced to take a more passive role in the classroom, which we just saw with the two models, one teach, one assist, and one teach, one observe. And finally, co-teaching is a conundrum in which co-teachers have to relinquish control in order to be successful. But when some teachers are unwilling to do so, it makes it impossible to thrive in that type of environment. So both teachers have to be willing to work together. So while the research on the student perspective is limited, there have been studies done to evaluate the student experience with co-teaching, which I will be discussing now. So in studies done to identify how students feel about co-teaching, the following benefits have been identified. One is the availability of help, structural support, multiple explanations, different teaching styles, and an increased understanding of assignments have all been identified as positive aspects of co-teaching. Students in the Wilson-Michael study argued that co-teaching provides a caring learning environment that encourages students not to drop out of high school, therefore increasing the graduation rate. Students with disabilities have a positive impact from co-teaching, but it was also found that students without disabilities liked the collaborative model and felt it had a positive effect on their grades and self-esteem. To expand upon the idea of self-esteem, students noted that their co-taught classes caused them to be more sure of themselves in classes because they knew the material better and had more of opportunities to ask questions and further their knowledge. Finally, students who were taught by effective co-teaching teams indicated their overall satisfaction with the instructional practice. Students also reported that they received more academic assistance and had fewer behavior problems in co-taught classes. During Gerber and Pop's study, students were interviewed on their experience with co-teaching. One student emphasized the benefit of having two teachers because when one teacher is busy, the other can help. Another student expressed that it is better when teachers are different, like in the area of personality. Regarding grades, one student explained their academic improvement by stating, "I went from F to A and from D to B when collaborative teaching started." Another student stated that although my grades haven't really gone up, they are able to understand a whole lot more. Despite the positive aspects of co-teaching, again, students did also identify a variety of drawbacks in the model. One drawback identified was confusion because students were often provided with different explanations from each teacher. That complaint was actually repeated multiple times, with students in other studies stating that they received contradictory explanations from each teacher. Additionally, students reported from being distracted when one teacher was teaching and another was assisting the students around the room, so using like a one teach, one assist model. And finally, students expressed that there was a lack of consistency in teaching approaches, differing teaching styles, which was also identified as a benefit. So in some cases, it could be seen as a benefit, some as a drawback, and disorganization between the two teachers, making it difficult to learn and pay attention. Other drawbacks, interestingly, were recognized by students may actually be considered educationally positive, especially by teachers and administrators. Those include not being able to cheat or do homework from another class because there is another teacher in the room watching. Students were also unhappy that they were less able to misbehave and were unable to talk as much as they would have been if there was one teacher managing behavior rather than two. These drawbacks showed that there was not a negative impact on learning, but rather a positive impact on classroom behavior management. So now it is time to get to the study. After extensive research on co-teaching, we created our own study on students' perspectives to see if our results followed the themes of previous research done. To research, Dr. Taylor and I created a survey to analyze the students' experience with instructional practices, classroom environment, teaching strategies, and personal education philosophies, entitled Exploration of Classroom Experiences, Elementary, Middle, and High School. It is important to note that the phrase co-teaching was never utilized within the survey. This is because students may not have known what the phrase meant, and we wanted to ensure that students were reflecting on their experiences with having two teachers without getting confused with terminology. This survey was sent out to all Mount St. Mary College undergrad students via email in March of 2020. It was resent out to the freshman class of 2024 in April 2021. A total of 178 people participated in this survey. A majority of the students who participated in the survey attended a public school, which was over 80% of people for elementary, middle, and high school. The sizes of the school varied depending on the level, and there was not one clear favorite answer. For example, for elementary school, 39.5% attended a medium-sized school of 301 to 500 students, and 31.1% attended a small school with under 300 students, 34.3% attended a medium-sized school, middle school, and 32% attended a large. High school sizes had a clear majority option for size, with 52.8% of students attending a large high school. A majority of the students who took the survey attended a mid-socioeconomic district. These results show that co-teaching practices mainly occurred in public mid-socioeconomic school districts based on the participants in this survey. The most amount of students who took the survey attended school primarily in the Hudson Valley, with the second most being counties on Long Island and then New York City. Students also reported being from Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. When asked if the students enjoyed their school experiences, a little over half reported that they enjoyed their elementary school a great deal, and 25.3% reported that they enjoyed it a lot. Only 2.8% enjoyed it a little or did not enjoy it at all. The level of satisfaction decreased with middle school, with only about half enjoying it a great deal or a lot, and high school increased with 65.2% in total enjoying it a great deal or a lot, but still not as much as elementary school. So elementary school was a clear favored winner in this case. Out of 178 respondents, a little over half, or 53.4%, had been in a classroom with two teachers. 95 people were able to continue with the survey to investigate their co-teaching experience. The rest were asked to stop because they were not going to be able to answer the questions if they did not have experience. More than half of the students in the survey had two teachers in elementary school. This was really interesting to me because when researching students' perspective of co-teaching, I was unable to find any research on the elementary experience. Yet most people in this survey had experienced co-teaching in elementary school. So this could be attributed to the lack of research in elementary school experiences, or perhaps the students in this survey differ from students around the country, with most not experiencing co-teaching until higher levels of schooling. This piece is also fascinating because, as previously mentioned, a majority of students enjoyed their elementary school experience more than their middle or high school. Further research would be needed to see if co-teaching was an aspect that made elementary school more enjoyable, but that could be a possible connection that needs to be looked into the future. Now that we have our demographic data, I want to take some time to analyze the survey question and see which models of co-teaching the participants in the survey experienced. One interesting dichotomy that I wanted to begin with was the model of team teaching. Earlier in the survey, the question, "My teachers work together consistently," more than half of the students agreed with that, with another 23.2% strongly agreeing. Only 6.4% disagreed or strongly disagreed. Teachers working together consistently align with the team teaching model, leading me to believe that team teaching, or a version of that type of collaboration, was present in the classroom of those answering the survey. However, the question, "I remember both teachers teaching lessons together," another question that points toward team teaching, received a lower number of people who agree and strongly disagree. While the number of people agreeing is still higher than the number of people disagreeing, the answer is not as consistent with the previous graph. Compared to the other graphs that we will see on the next slide, this one has the lowest number of people agreeing and the highest number of people disagreeing, leading me to conclude that team teaching, although used by some people in the survey, is not the predominant model of co-teaching seen. Although the teachers worked together consistently, they did not work together to teach lessons, which is an important distinction to be made. The co-teaching models, parallel teaching, station teaching, and one teach, one assist, are addressed in these graphs. I chose these three specifically because their results were pretty similar and match each other well, while the other models, like alternative teaching and one teach, one observe, did not. So this is why I'm going to specifically talk about these three models. The top left, "I remember the class splitting into small groups and each working with one teacher," refers to the parallel teaching model. With 42.6% agreeing and 20.2% strongly agreeing, it appears pretty popular and their results are pretty similar. But if you compare it to the others, it does not stand out as the predominant model of co-teaching used. So although it is popular, it is not the most popular. The next two models, one teach, one assist, represented by the graph, "I remember one teacher teaching the lesson and the other walking around to assist," and station teaching, which is represented by "I remember working in small groups and working independently during a lesson," both have very similar results. The one teach, one assist model has extremely similar rates of agreeing and strongly agreeing, only a small percentage larger than the station teaching model. When adding the agreeing percentages together, the sums of the agreeing participants are only 0.01% away from each other. The only major difference comes with the disagree section, with 8 disagreeing with one teach, one assist, and 4 disagreeing with station teaching, with 3 strongly disagreeing. One teach, one assist actually does not have one person strongly disagree, the only time within the entire survey that this occurs, which proves that no one is greatly opposing the model. Because of that, it can be concluded that one teach, one assist is the most predominant model of co-teaching utilized in the participants' classrooms, although only by a slim margin. One teach, one assist, however, is not an effective model of co-teaching since it lacks a collaboration piece, showing that the students who participated in the survey did not experience co-teaching at its peak level of teamwork and cooperation. One concern regarding co-teaching was the idea that the special education teacher would be seen as a lesser teacher and take a passive role in the classroom. When asked if both teachers had authority in the classroom, the results were relatively positive, with almost half agreeing and 28.4% strongly agreeing. 9.5% of people disagreed, but when looking at the total number of people, a total of 9 disagreed, while 44 agreed and 27 strongly agreed, which I was able to see when I looked more in depth on the Google form that I had sent out. Although both teachers had authority in the classroom, the results were mixed on whether a teacher played a lesser role than the other. As shown in the graph, 34.7% agreed, but 23.2% disagreed, which was 33 people versus 22 people, a slimmer margin. While 15.8% strongly agreed, there were 7.4% who disagreed, and then 18.9% who were neutral on the topic. The mixed graph that does not show an overpowering amount of agreement reflects the idea that although both teachers had authority in the classroom, they both did not have equal roles in the classroom, meaning that students may have respected and listened to both teachers, but one teacher took on the so-called role of a main teacher, while the other, most likely the special education teacher, served a more passive role, a fear which was shown in the research for concerns against co-teaching and has been proven in this survey. I separated these specific questions since they reflect the positive aspects of co-teaching listed earlier in the presentation. I wanted to compare the previous research with my own research to see if there were any similarities or differences. Regarding a comfortable classroom environment, student in Wilson's and Michael's studies had identified a caring and comfortable learning environment as a positive aspect of co-teaching. By looking at the survey results, it is clear that a large majority of Mount St. Mary College students also see that to be true. 60% of students agreed with the fact that the learning environment was comfortable, the largest percentage of agreement seen within the entire survey. 24.2% of students strongly agreed, and only 4.2% strongly disagreed, and 3.2% disagreed. My research directly matches Wilson and Michael's, showing that a comfortable classroom environment plays a vital role in co-teaching. Gerber and Pop and Hang and Rabran reported that both students and teachers saw an increase in academic achievement because of co-teaching. The statement, "I was an effective learner in that class as indicated by good grades," has an overwhelming amount of people who strongly agree, 40%, the most amount in the entire survey. Additionally, 38.9% of people agreed, 6.6% of people strongly disagreed, and 1.1% of people disagreed. The immense agreement shown within this question reflects the research, proving that academic achievement and co-teaching go hand in hand. Finally, Gerber and Pop and Diker both express individualization as an increase in assistance and specific question answering as a benefit of co-teaching. This question did not receive the same definite positive agreement that the two previous statements on the graph did. Instead, it was relatively mixed, with 29.5% agreeing, 22.1% disagreeing, 15.8% strongly disagreeing, and 10.5% strongly agreeing. In the Gerber and Pop study, students without disabilities universally acknowledge that the students with disabilities receive more help in the classroom. Although I do not specifically know if the students who answered this survey have disabilities or not, that could be a reason why this research did not reflect the previous studies done. Overall, this study affirms that academic achievement and comfortable, positive learning environments are results of co-teaching. The students in Hang and Rabran, Imbury and Kroger, and Gerber and Pop all expressed disorganization as a drawback of co-teaching. The results in the survey went against those studies, with 51.6% of students agreeing that the classroom was well organized and 32.6% of students strongly agreeing. Only 4.2% of students disagreed and strongly disagreed. Although repeatedly labeled as a concern of co-teaching, that is not something that is seen as a concern by participants of the survey. At the end of the survey, there was the question, is there anything else that you would like to add or expand upon? If so, add your comments below. These are a few of the quotes that summarize the differing opinions from the participants. So these quotes help me to understand the level of understanding of co-teaching that these students have, which is why I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss them briefly. So for example, the far right quote that says, depends on the disability, wheelchair, no problem. Severely autistic, no, could affect the potential of other students to effectively learn. And while I do understand that, I just wanted to expand upon a little bit of how co-teaching works with that. So for example, because of the idea of least restrictive environment, or LRE, students are supposed to be in the environment that best suits their needs and least restricts them. If a student would not succeed in a co-taught class and would need a more restrictive environment, that is where they'll be placed. So that's not really a concern that should have, because if a student is negatively affecting other students in the classroom, it's not a classroom that they would be placed in. So the other quotes talk about different aspects of co-teaching. So the left quote, although I believe that classrooms should be multicultural, I do believe that children with disabilities should be in an environment that best suits their needs. That again goes with the LRE, least restrictive environment. So students will be placed in the environment that best suits them. The middle quote, it allows students, especially at a young age, to learn about different cultures amongst them. That is really important with the co-taught class, is students being exposed to other students who may be unlike them, which is really important in classrooms. And the bottom quote refers to two teachers working together well because they were friends. So that is so important. It's important for co-teachers to be able to get along. And if they have a strong relationship, they will have an effective co-taught classroom. So those are just some important quotes that I felt really summarized and some concerns that I was able to clear up. So at the end of the survey, students were also encouraged to leave their email if they were willing to participate in a brief interview regarding the topic. Interview questions included the benefits and drawbacks of a co-teaching experience. 5 students completed interviews regarding the survey. Of the 5 additional student interviews, 3 students have experienced co-teaching in elementary school, with 1 student experiencing it in both middle school and elementary school, and 2 people had co-teaching experience in high school. So some benefits included having their questions answered faster, being exposed to students who learn differently, something that was mentioned on the previous slide, which again is so important in classrooms. Smaller teacher to pupil ratio, having an extra person help the flow of the classroom, organization, and always another resource in the room. The themes of having more assistants to answer questions and assist is a common one that have been repeated multiple times. It was seen in previous research. Organization also stood out to me, since many of the previous studies identified disorganization as a drawback. So it is interesting that the students here, again, seen with the survey research, saw that organization was actually a benefit. So some drawbacks include getting different answers from teachers, lack of communication, favoritism, and the teachers did not work together well. The lack of communication and consistency were all drawbacks seen in previous studies, showing that these drawbacks are a similar experience for many of the students in co-taught classrooms. One very important takeaway that I had from the interviews was the language used by the participants. In every interview, the phrases main teacher and assistant or co-teacher were utilized. In co-teaching, it is vital that both teachers have the same role and status, and that there is no main or assistant teacher, for both teachers should be the main teacher. From this, I was able to further conclude the prominence of the one teach, one assist method, meaning that many of these students have not experienced cooperative co-teaching, something that is concerning. Another takeaway was that when asked if they had ever become aware of why there were 2 teachers, many answered that they knew because the other teacher in their room wasn't there for them. In an effective co-taught classroom, it should be difficult to be able to identify the special and general education teacher. The fact that these students knew that one teacher specifically was there for them and one teacher specifically wasn't there for them proves that to be untrue. Additionally, the teachers in the classroom are supposed to be there for every student regardless of their certification. That is not something that was occurring within the students of these surveys, and as shown by the graphs, is something that was not occurring within the entire survey. So conclusions. After all of that data, it's time to recap on the conclusions that were drawn from this. We have learned that this study reflected many of the positives of co-teaching, such as academic achievement and a positive, comfortable learning environment. This study also debunked the concern of organization between teachers, with the participants of this survey claiming that to be untrue. However, the most important and concerning conclusion is the fact that the most predominant co-teaching model utilized was the one teach, one assist. This, as we have seen, is not an effective model of co-teaching. As shown, especially in the interviews, it leads to superiority of the main teacher versus the assistant teacher. From this, we're able to see that there's definitely a lack of collaboration among co-teachers. So what do we do with this information? It is clear that there must be something done to prepare and educate teachers regarding co-teaching practices so that it can be used effectively. A couple ways to do that is more exposure to co-teaching for teacher preparation programs, ensuring that future teachers are exposed to all of the models and their pros and cons before begin teaching. Because some of the people in teacher preparation programs may not have never been in a co-taught classroom, or if they have been in one, may not have been an effective one. So it is really important that you are exposing them to the models and the pros and cons so that they know which one to use and they know how to use it effectively. Professional development at all levels is vital to help all teachers learn and improve, especially in the area of co-teaching. More districts integrating co-teaching can lead to the practice being more accepted and widespread, increasing the benefits. And finally, further research into student experience utilizing more collaborative co-teaching models to exemplify the benefits. So, as I had mentioned, there is not a lot of research done regarding the student experience, especially regarding collaborative student experiences using methods such as team teaching. So more research into that would be extremely beneficial to show people why those methods are really important to use and why other methods may not be as beneficial to their students. These are my references that help me to really immerse myself in the world of co-teaching and become more confident on the subject. And before I end, I just want to say thank you specifically to Dr. Taylor for helping me with this research project. We've been doing this research for about a year now, and it's been an extremely rewarding process. This is really important research, and I hope that I've been able to expose more people to the practice of co-teaching and to learn about the benefits and the different models and improve the world of education because of it. So thank you so much for experiencing this presentation. I appreciate it.